Today I'm in the Golf Cave at Leeds Golf Club and I'm going to be testing out the new Epic drivers from Callaway. I'm going to be seeing how the three models stack up against each other and also how they compare to last year's Mavrik offering. I'm really excited for these because I had the Mavrik in all last season and hopefully I'll get the chance to upgrade to one of these. So let's go see how they perform. So just before we start hitting the new range, I just want to run through the lineup. We've got three offerings here, the Epic Speed, which is the smallest head in the lineup and which I would expect to be the fastest head, and it's noticeable here this is the only one without the adjustable track on the back. Then we've got the Epic Max, this is the biggest head and it's designed to be the most forgiving. Now finally we have the Epic Max LS, and this is a bit of a different offering from last year. Last year we had the low spin offering in the Mavrik, but this was a very small head and not as forgiving. This time this is going to give you that maximum forgiveness as well, but in a low spin offering. So definitely a different take from the Mavrik Sub-Zero that we saw last year. In terms of looks, personally for me over the ball, I do prefer the Epic Speed. I like the smaller club head and I feel like I can swing it a bit faster, which gives me a bit more distance. Whereas with the Epic Max and the Max LS, these are much bigger club heads, which is noticeable over the ball. Other than that, I would say over the ball, the visuals are very similar to last year. Obviously we've got this new green colourway, which I still really like, but really in terms of textures and stuff like that, the top of the crown is visually very similar to last year's Mavrik. I think that's really nice. It's a good looking club and it's really nice and simple and classic behind the ball. So first of all, I'm just going to hit 10 shots with my gamer. This is the Callaway Mavrik. I used it all last season, and then after that I'm going to bring in the new models and see how they compare. Okay, 222 carry to start. Pretty strong start, I'd say. Struck out pretty good, but I just lost it a bit to the right. Okay, so I've hit 10 shots there. I'd say in general it was pretty consistent. Obviously I've been using this all season, so I would expect that. The distance was actually really good and probably a bit more on average than I would have expected. It averaged at 223, but some of my best shots were up in the 230s. Then in terms of spin and launch angle, those numbers were all really good. I knew what I would be expecting. Obviously I've been custom fit for that, so it's not really surprising, but I think the other three are probably going to have quite a hard task of beating this. I would say one area which definitely could be better was probably the dispersion. It wasn't quite as good as it has been. I was losing quite a few shots to the right and left. Obviously that's always going to happen, but let's see if the new models are a bit more forgiving. Okay, first up I'm going to hit the Epic Speed. Visually this is my favourite as it's slightly smaller than some of the other offerings, and I think it's probably the most similar to the Mavrik that I had last year. I've also had the opportunity to take this out on the course already and I was really impressed with the performance, in particular the stability and just how straight it flew. So today what I've done is added my shafting for the Mavrik just for fairness, and we're going to see how it performs with that. I'm sorry, but can we just appreciate how straight the shot just went? It literally landed on the line. Oh my god. Really consistent in terms of shot shape so far. So after 10 shots, this went a grand total of 1 yard further than the Mavrik. So not really that much, and I have to say, to be honest, I felt like I was striking it really nicely. One big noticeable difference was this is definitely more draw bias than last year's offering. I think that is down to some of their technology. Obviously we've got this lighter carbon panel on the toe, and you definitely could see that in my shot shape, and my dispersion was exceptionally tight. I mean, I hit one shot that I lost out to the right, which wasn't great, but all the rest were really consistent. Now another thing that was really interesting was nearly every shot went exactly the same distance. I mean, my front to back dispersion was really strong, definitely more consistent with the Mavrik, and even if there were a few yards left and right than each other, they were almost all the same distance. So in terms of dispersion, I was really impressed here, and you can definitely see that there's that added stability. So I've got the Epic Max now. This is meant to be the most forgiving driver in the range, but to be honest, I was pretty impressed with the dispersion with the Epic Speed, so I'm really interested to see just what differences there are here. say I'm not sure I like the feel as much this year. It just does feel a bit duller off the face compared to the Mavrik lineup. I don't really mind the sound, but in terms of feel, I'm not sure they've quite got it right here. So you're not going to believe this, but that averaged exactly the same distance as the Epic Speed at 224 yards on average. Now I have to say the dispersion was a little bit tighter, and I definitely didn't see any of those shots lost out to the right, but there still was a tendency for it to be a bit more draw biased. I do think generally this is really good to aid golfers, because typically we see people struggle with a slice much more than we do with a draw. For me, I hit a draw already, so I would say this is over-drawing a little bit for me, but it's nothing drastic, and it definitely could be fine-tuned using the adjustable hosel here to get the ball fly that I wanted. In terms of launch angle, again it was very similar, varying by under a degree, but noticeably there was a bit more spin with this model, about 300 RPM more. Lastly, I would say it was definitely noticeable that this flew a little bit lower. Typically for me, I can launch it a bit high, so I didn't really mind this, but it just really depends if you're wanting that extra high on your shots or not. Okay, finally we've got the Max LS. I think this is going to be really interesting, because typically I would never put myself in a low spin model because I don't think I spin it enough or have a fast enough club head speed. But this option is slightly different because it's got that Max offering in there as well, so it's slightly bigger and it's also aiming to be a bit more forgiving. So I think for those people who need that forgiveness but also spin it a lot, it's going to be a really good option. And I'm really interested to see how this performs for me. Okay, so this was actually the shortest driver of the 4 I've tested here, coming in at 221 yards on average. And I have to say I'm not really surprised. Throughout the testing, if I hit a good shot, it felt really nice, I had a nice ball flight and a really good dispersion. But my not so good strikes were coming out really low, so I just wasn't getting as far a carry and also the ball flight that I wanted. Some of these are even launching as low as 10 degrees, which definitely isn't going to cut it for me out on the course. Now, I thought this was going to be because I didn't have enough spin, but then when I took a look at the numbers, I was spinning this plenty, like 2,600 RPM, which was definitely higher than I expected to get with this club, but it was surprising that I was launching it so low with that much spin. Personally, this is probably my least favourite of the 3 new models. I just didn't find it as forgiving and also didn't feel like I could flight it high enough. But for people who hit it really high and struggle to get the ball flight down, this is definitely going to be a really good option. So overall, I have to say, in terms of distance, I was pretty happy. Although I didn't see that much increase in distance from the Mavrik, I definitely saw an increase in distance on my bad shots, which is probably the most important. Seeing that extra forgiveness there, and really that's where I'm more focused on again. Then in terms of dispersions, it was definitely a key area where I saw an increase in performance. And I've also seen this out on the golf course. I was really impressed with the Epic Speed when I was out playing with this. But I have to say, between the 3 new models, it was definitely the Max that was the most forgiving, and it was a lot more consistent than last year's Mavrik. In terms of front to back dispersion, all 3 models were pretty good, and definitely slightly better than last year's Mavrik. But I have to say, for me personally, in terms of feel, the Max and the Max LS felt a bit duller than last year's offering, and I didn't really like that. However, I did really like the Epic Speed feel, and it was much more similar to last year's Mavrik. Overall, I do think we've seen a big step up in stability here, and overall this is the key story with the new jailbreak system. I also think you're going to see a really big performance benefit here if you're someone who hits a fade or a slice. It's definitely going to help. All 3 of these models are definitely draw biased, and I could see that easily in the data. Personally, I'm a bit surprised I didn't see more distance with the Epic Speed. I was kind of expecting to compared to the Mavrik, but obviously I haven't been custom fit into this yet. I'm just using last year's shaft, so there's a potential that there could be some more gains to be seen here. I do think though, if you're someone who hits a fade or a slice already, and then you move into one of these draw biased products, because it's also more forgiving and it's helping that straighten up that shot shape, you're going to see more distance. I thought the Epic Speed was definitely going to be the model for me, and I think I probably still have a preference leading that way, but the forgiveness and the really tight dispersion of the Max is definitely swaying me a little bit. Right, that's all for this week. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below or drop me a line on Twitter or Instagram. And keep your eye on our channel for the full review of the rest of the Callaway Epic range coming soon. If you're after more golf content, head to the National Club Golfer social media channels for more.